The airport was buzzing that morning, rolling suitcases, muffled announcements, families rushing to catch their flights. But at gate 17, something unusual was unfolding. Two teenage girls, identical twins with matching braids and matching backpacks, stood nervously in front of the boarding counter. Their tickets were valid, their seats confirmed. But the gate agent leaned forward, lowering her voice with a condescending edgy. "Sorry, this flight is full. You'll have to wait." The twins exchanged a confused glance. They'd checked in early, cleared security smoothly, and were right on time. Yet somehow, their seats had vanished. Minutes later, another family, white, late, and clearly flustered, arrived at the gate. Without hesitation, the same agent smiled warmly, scanned their tickets, and waved them through. The twins felt the sting. Their voices cracked with urgency as they protested, but the agent's expression hardened. "If you keep causing trouble, I'll call security." Passengers nearby began to whisper. Some looked away. Others looked angry. But the twins, they weren't just ordinary kids. They had one card left to play. They pulled out a phone, scrolled to a familiar name, and pressed call. Within minutes, the entire boarding process came to a grinding halt. Airline supervisors rushed in, hushed phone calls zipped back and forth, and the once confident gate agent turned pale. Because the twins' father wasn't just any passenger. He was the man who signed off on the airline's future. The hum of the airport was its own kind of music, an endless, chaotic symphony of rushing footsteps, suitcase wheels bumping along tile, muffled conversations blending into the occasional sharp burst of laughter. The speakers overhead blared another boarding call, almost swallowed by the noise. It was travel as usual, but at gate 17 that rhythm broke. The air felt heavier and eyes began to turn. Two girls stood at the counter, their reflections caught in the glossy surface of the desk, twin images bracing against the storm. Maya and Jada Carter, 17 years old. Identical in face, but worlds apart in temperament. Maya carried herself with quiet resolve, her hand gripping her phone like a lifeline. Jada was all sharp edges and fire, her stance wide, shoulders squared as though she were ready to fight a battle she hadn't chosen. Across from them stood Ms. Whitfield, the gate agent, her navy blazer pressed to perfection, her lipstick precise, and her patience visibly unraveling. She had the kind of smile that could pass as professional to the untrained eye, but its edges cut. "Girls," she said tightly, leaning across the counter as if authority itself could bridge the gap. "I already told you. This flight is full." Jada snapped back, her voice rising above the buzz of the terminal. "No, it's not. We checked in. We were here before half these people." She thrust her phone forward, showing their boarding passes. "You gave away our seats." The passengers waiting nearby, at first half interested, then intrigued, began to pay full attention. The energy shifted. A businessman with a rolling briefcase froze in place. A young couple, arms linked, stopped mid-conversation. Even a toddler in a stroller seemed to sense the tension, going suddenly still. And then, the defining moment, another family, late and breathless, stumbled up to the gate, white, flustered, fumbling with their tickets. Ms. Whitfield's entire demeanor changed. The hardness vanished, replaced with a smile warm enough to melt ice. "Oh, you're right on time. Let's get you through." The scanner beeped approvingly. The family was ushered down the jet bridge with ease. The silence that followed was loud. Maya's throat tightened. "Why them and not us?" The agent's mask slipped again. "Step aside before you cause a scene." But the scene was already here. The man with the briefcase muttered under his breath, "They were here first." A woman rocking her baby nodded, whispering, "This doesn't look fair." Another passenger, less subtle, said it outright, "We all know what this is about." Ms. Whitfield stiffened, her face flushing. Her authority, once unquestioned, was starting to crumble. Jada folded her arms, refusing to yield. "We're not moving." That was when the first shadow of power appeared. A TSA officer walked toward them, his reflective vest catching the fluorescent light. He wasn't aggressive, but his posture radiated control. One hand hovering a little too close to his belt, the other gripping his radio. His gaze swept over the girls, assessing, calculating. Passengers shifted uneasily. Some pulled out their phones. Cameras tilted upward discreetly, the soft clicks of recording apps almost lost in the hum of the terminal. Everyone knew the weight of footage these days. Maya's voice shook, but she steadied it. They want us to look like the problem. Jada's jaw clenched. Then we'll show them the truth. The supervisor arrived next. Tall, neat uniform, walkie-talkie buzzing at his side. His presence should have brought order, but instead, it made the crowd lean in closer. He was the kind of man who'd decide whether this escalated into chaos or not. "What's happening here?" he demanded. "Ms." Whitfield leapt at the opportunity. "These two are refusing to comply. They don't have seats." Jada's hand shot up, phone glowing bright. 430A and 413B confirmed. The supervisor's face darkened. "If that's true, why weren't they boarded?" Ms. Whitfield faltered. It's a clerical error. The flight was overbooked." The explanation landed flat. Passengers exchanged looks, some skeptical, some furious. One voice cut through, louder than the rest. Overbooked for them, but not the family who was late. The implication was clear. Everyone heard it. "Miss." Whitfield's polished fade cracked. Her mouth opened, but no words came. The weight of the accusation hung in the air, undeniable. And then, Maya's phone buzzed. She glanced down. A message from Dad, "Don't move." The boarding area at Gate 17 no longer felt like part of the airport. It had become its own stage, its own pressure cooker. Passengers shifted in their seats, whispering, speculating, recording. Some leaned in, invested in the unfolding drama. Others sat back annoyed, muttering that delays were delays no matter who caused them. But for Ms. Whitfield, the gate agent at the center, the situation had already spiraled past her comfort zone. She typed furiously into her terminal, every keystroke deliberate. Passengers argumentative. Passengers refused instructions. Boarding delayed due to disruptive behavior. She knew the script by heart. Write it down early, frame the story fast, and if higher-ups questioned it later, the written record would protect her. It always had before. The supervisor beside her, Mr. Daniels, adjusted his radio, his lips tight. "Ops, this is Daniels at Gate 17, we may need security assistance." Two minors, situation escalating. The phrasing was careful, "may need." It left room to walk back later if corporate scrutiny turned harsh. But it also sent a clear message: prepare for force if words didn't work. The TSA officer, still hovering nearby, nodded. He didn't need instructions. He'd seen this play out dozens of times. Get the problem. Passengers off the premises. Restore order, move on. Airports ran on procedure, not empathy. Yet empathy was spreading in the crowd. "I saw them standing here the whole time," muttered the businessman with the rolling briefcase. "They're not lying." A mother bounced her toddler on her hip, shaking her head. "I've been flying 20 years. Never seen a late family boarded over confirmed passengers." Ms. Whitfield overheard, her jaw clenching. The passengers weren't just witnesses now, they were a threat. Their voices could challenge her version of events. And if this story went public, if videos hit social media, her career could collapse before she clocked out. She turned sharply to Daniels. "We need to shut this down before it spreads." "Close boarding? Say it's a system error?" Daniels frowned but obeyed, typing into the computer. The boarding door beeped shut, locking with a metallic click. Groans rippled through the crowd. A ripple of anger followed. "Unbelievable," someone muttered. "Now we're all late because of this mess? This airline is always a disaster." Whitfield seized on the distraction. The angrier the passengers grew about delays, the less they'd focus on her. That was the plan. Still, the twins remained, unmoving, unafraid. Maya's eyes stayed locked on the gate agent, her phone gripped tight. Jada stood with arms crossed, jaw set, daring Whitfield to make her next move. Whitfield leaned closer to Daniels, lowering her voice to a hiss. If we escalate this to airport police, the story is ours. 2 unruly teenagers. Safety protocol followed. Done. Daniels shifted uncomfortably. He wasn't naive. He'd seen staff lean on that narrative before. They're minors, he warned. It'll look bad. Not if the report says they were aggressive, Whitfield countered quickly. Not if TSA backs us. Not if security removes them. Who's going to believe a couple of kids over staff? Her logic was airtight. At least, it always had been. But she underestimated 2 things: the cameras filming, and the father who had just been patched into the station manager's line 3 terminals away. The call came through like a lightning strike. Station manager Reynolds. This is David Carter, CEO. Reynolds nearly dropped the phone. Yes, sir. Why am I getting reports of 2 passengers being denied boarding at gate 17? Carter's voice was low, controlled, but seething with power. Reynolds stammered, I am gathering details right now. You'll gather them faster? Carter snapped. Those passengers are my daughters. Silence. The weight of the revelation crashed through the line. Reynolds swallowed hard. Understood, sir. I'll handle it personally. Back at gate 17, Whitfield was still spinning her web. She picked up the landline phone, dialing operations directly. Her tone was clipped, professional, rehearsed. Gate 17. We've got 2 passengers refusing instructions, becoming disruptive. Strongly recommend removal before situation escalates further. Every word was precise. Refusing instructions, disruptive. Removal recommended. She knew the key words that triggered response teams, knew exactly how to paint a picture that would shield her from blame. She hung up with a decisive click, exhaling slowly. Crisis contained, she told herself. Any moment now, security will arrive and escort them away. This will be forgotten by tomorrow. But when she turned back to her computer, Daniels was staring at her with unease. You sure about this? He asked quietly. They've got proof. The crowd's watching? Whitfield's eyes flashed. Crowds don't matter. Policy matters. And policy's on our side. But she was wrong. For once, the crowd mattered very much. The man with the headphones raised his phone higher, recording directly now. So you're telling us? He said loudly enough for all to hear, that 2 kids with confirkets being kicked off because why? Exactly. Heads turned. Cameras angled. The pressure mounted. Whitfield tried to brush it off. Sir, please refrain from interfering. This is an internal matter. But it was too late. Her control of the narrative was slipping, pixel by pixel, as live streams and recordings captured her every move. And then the supervisor's radio crackled. A voice boomed through. Urgent, gate 17. This is station manager Reynolds. Hold all actions. CEO is monitoring this situation directly. Daniel's eyes widened. He repeated it aloud so everyone could hear. CEO is monitoring. Even the baby stopped crying. Whitfield's face drained of color. She'd played this game before. Spinning policy, shifting blame, hiding behind procedure. But never with the CEO himself breathing down her neck. She tried to recover, forcing a smile, but her hands shook as she adjusted her keyboard. Well, then let's ensure everything is documented properly. Jada whispered to Maya. She's panicking? Maya whispered back, Dad's in it now. This is bigger than her. Behind the scenes, the villain's plan was crumbling. What began as a routine abuse of authority, deny seats, cover with policy, escalate if challenged, was now exposed under the harshest spotlight possible. Whitfield had built her wall of narrative, but it was cracking from all sides, the passengers' cameras, the CEO's intervention, and the undeniable evidence glowing on the twins' phones. Yet still, she clung to her script. If we frame it as a safety risk, she muttered under her breath, corporate won't blame me. They never do. But this time, corporate wasn't just watching. Corporate was the father. And his patience had already run out. The boarding area at gate 17 was no longer an airport gate. It was a courtroom. Dozens of passengers, their faces a blend of outrage and anticipation, sat as unwilling jurors. The twins, Maya and Jada, were the plaintiffs, calm but burning inside. Ms. Whitfield, the gate agent, was the defendant, hiding behind her keyboard. And the unseen judge, their father, David Carter, CEO of the airline, his voice cutting through radios and phones like a gavel. Gate 17. This is Carter. I want the full report, now. The words exploded through Daniel's walkie-talkie, his shoulders stiffening under the weight. Everyone within earshot froze. Whitfield's hands twitched above her keyboard. Her carefully built defense, the typed log painting the girls as disruptive, was no longer a shield. Under Carter's gaze, every word could be an indictment. Daniels, caught in the middle, stammered into the radio. Sir, 2 passengers were denied boarding due to an overbooking complication. They refused instructions. The twins shot each other a glance. Jada's eyebrows arched. Refused instructions? Maya's grip tightened on her phone. Carter's reply came fast and merciless. Which passengers? Daniels swallowed. 2 minors, sir. Names? Carter demanded. Daniels hesitated. The silence stretched, the crowd holding its breath. Finally, he said, Maya and Jada Carter. The name detonated like thunder. Passengers gasped. A few even chuckled in disbelief, whispering, Carter. As in the CEO Carter. The twins stood taller. Jada's lips curved into the faintest smirk. Maya exhaled, the tension in her chest loosening. Whitfield's face went pale, as if the floor had dropped beneath her. She tried to recover, rushing to interject. Sir, these passengers misrepresented. Carter's voice cut her off, ice cold. Ms. Whitfield, is it? Yes. Sir? Step away from the counter. She froze. Sir, now. Her hand slipped from the keyboard. She stepped back, every movement stiff, robotic. The passengers leaned forward, captivated. This wasn't just drama anymore. It was a reckoning. But the counterattack wasn't just about silencing Whitfield. It was about rewriting the story. Maya, Carter said over the radio. Show the supervisor your boarding passes. Let every passenger here see them. Maya's hands trembled slightly as she held up her phone. The glowing screen reflected in dozens of eyes around the gate. Seats 4 through A and 14B, confirmed. Phones zoomed in, capturing every pixel. Carter's voice pressed on. Supervisor Daniels, explain why confirmed passengers were replaced with late arrivals. Daniels stuttered. It appears there was a system error. No. Carter snapped. There was a choice? Own it. The crowd murmured. The man with the headphones muttered. Finally, someone calling it out. Whitfield, standing rigid by the wall, whispered harshly, we didn't choose. Carter's voice roared, even through static. Don't lie to me. I sign your paycheck. The gate fell silent. For the first time, the twins weren't alone. The crowd transformed from passive witnesses into allies. I saw her give their seats away, the businessman declared, pointing at Whitfield. They were here before me. The mother with the toddler chimed in, and she threatened to call security on them for asking questions. Phones were lifted higher, voices louder, the weight of collective truth rising. Whitfield's last defense, policy, crumbled under the flood of eyewitness testimony. Her plan to paint the girls as disruptive shattered, and Carter wielded the crowd's voices like a weapon. You hear them, Daniels? That's your evidence. That's the real report? Daniels' face flushed. He'd been trained to protect the brand, but in this moment, the brand was watching him. And the brand was furious. Then came the decisive move. Effective immediately, Carter said, his voice heavy with authority, boarding at gate 17 is suspended. Every passenger will remain until this is corrected. And Ms. Whitfield, consider yourself relieved of duty. Security will escort you, not my daughters. The words struck like lightning. Passengers erupted, some applauding, others shaking their heads in disbelief. The twins stood motionless, the weight of vindication washing over them. Whitfield's knees buckled slightly. Relief of duty wasn't a slap on the wrist. It was career suicide. She opened her mouth, desperate for a last defense. Sir, I was just following? No. Carter interrupted. Final. You were following bias? And bias has no place in this airline. The crowd exploded in cheers. Phones shook as passengers captured the moment the powerful mask of authority cracked. But the counterattack wasn't just about punishment. It was about reclaiming power. Daniels, Carter commanded, see that my daughters are boarded immediately. And not in Fortune A and Fortune B, first class. The supervisor nodded rapidly, typing into the system with trembling fingers. The printer spat out upgraded boarding passes. He handed them over with both hands as if offering sacred relics. Maya and Jada accepted them, stunned. The twins, who only minutes ago were nearly branded as troublemakers, were now walking symbols of accountability. The passengers erupted again, clapping, cheering, muttering phrases like, good for them. And, about time someone in power stepped in. But Carter wasn't done. His voice carried through one last command, and every passenger here, free meal vouchers for the delay. On me, the gate broke into applause, even laughter. The tension shattered into relief. Yet beneath the cheers, a deeper truth lingered. The twins knew this wasn't just about them. If their father hadn't been who he was, would anyone have listened? Would their proof have mattered? Or would the villain's plan, the manipulation, the lies, the narrative of disruptive passengers, have succeeded as it had so many times before? Maya glanced at her sister. Jada's smile was small, bittersweet. The counterattack had succeeded. Just, at least in this moment, had prevailed. But victory carried its own weight. Because now, the whole airport was watching. And the real confrontation was only beginning. For a moment, Gate 17 felt like a celebration. Passengers smiled, vouchers in hand, and the twins clutched their first-class tickets with stunned relief. Justice had been served, but justice is rarely tidy. As Ms. Whitfield was escorted toward the side office, her lips curled into a smile, not of defeat, but defiance. She glanced back at the twins, her eyes glinting with venom. This isn't over. The security guard beside her whispered, "Ma'am, let's move." She moved, but her silence was heavy with promise. Inside the gate's operations room, a cramped space lined with computer monitors and flight schedules, Whitfield grabbed the phone from the wall before security could stop her. Her voice, low and sharp, carried urgency. Operations Control, this is Whitfield at Gate 17. We have an executive override in progress. But listen to me, those girls, they're not just passengers. They're being used. If this story leaks, it'll bury us all. I suggest we ground the flight until this is contained. The line crackled. On the other end, a manager named Steele, hard-nosed, ambitious, and hungry for power, listened carefully. Steele had spent years circling Carter's leadership, waiting for a misstep. And now, one had landed in his lap. Copy that? Steele said coolly. Delay authorization granted. Let's see how the mighty Carter explains this one. Back at the gate, the departure screen flickered. The green on time shifted to yellow, deleting further information coming. Passengers groaned. What now? Muttered the businessman. Maya looked at the board, her stomach dropping. Jada whispered, Dad fixed this. Why is it still delayed? Daniels, sweating at the counter, tapped frantically at his keyboard. It's out of my hands. Control just froze the boarding sequence. The twins froze. Their father's voice came back on the radio, clipped and tight. Why hasn't Flight 227 departed? Daniels swallowed. Sir, Operations Control locked the gate. A pause. Then Carter's tone hardened. Put me through. Now. The passengers grew restless. A young man in the back yelled, This is ridiculous. First you blocked 2 girls from boarding, now you're holding all of us hostage. Another chimed in, Feels like they're covering something up. Phones lifted again. Hashtags were already forming, tweets already flying. The conflict wasn't just trapped at Gate 17 anymore. It was bleeding into the world outside. Maya's chest tightened. Jada leaned close. They're turning it back on us? We're the problem again. Meanwhile, in a sleek office 2 terminals away, Steele leaned back in his chair, savoring the chaos. He pictured headlines: Sion Children's Spark Airport Meltdown. If Carter lost credibility, Steele could position himself as the steady hand the airline needed. And Whitfield's whispered account, the girls being oozed, gave him ammunition. He keyed into the radio. Carter, this is Steele in operations. We need clarification. Your daughter's situation has disrupted boarding procedures, created passenger unrest, and jeopardized flight schedules. Until I get a full written report, Flight 227 isn't leaving this gate? The words echoed across Gate 17 as Daniels relayed them. Gasps rippled. The crowd shifted uneasily, the victory from moments ago collapsing into confusion. Carter's reply came like thunder. Steele, you don't have the authority to halt flights without board approval. Steele's tone was silky, dangerous. Then call the board. Let's see whose side they're on. Amaya's phone buzzed. It was a text from her father. Stay calm. This isn't over. Trust me. But calm was impossible. Security hovered near the gate, not to protect the twins, but to contain the passengers. The mother with the toddler whispered, "They're trying to make you the scapegoat now." The twins felt the walls closing in. Their win was turning into a trap. Then came the announcement. "Attention, passengers of Flight 227, the intercom blared. Your departure has been indefinitely delayed due to operational concerns. Please remain at the gate for further instructions." The word indefinitely hit like a hammer. Passengers shouted, some demanded refunds. Others crowded the counter, shouting at Daniels. And in the middle of it, Whitfield's voice carried through like poison. She had managed to slip back near the crowd, speaking in low tones. "This isn't about race, it's about abuse of power. Their father's pulling strings, and now everyone's paying the price." Her words spread like smoke. A man near the window muttered, "She might be right. We're stuck here because of favoritism." The narrative was shifting. Again. Maya clenched her fists. "They're flipping it on us, Jada?" Jada's eyes burned. "Then we fight? Right here? Right now?" She stood, her voice rising above the chaos. "We didn't cause this delay. We were denied seats that were ours, just because of how we look. And now, they're punishing all of you to make us the villains. Don't let them twist this." The crowd quieted, eyes turned. The businessman shouted, "She's right. We all saw what happened." The mother with the toddler raised her phone, and I recorded it. Every second, a ripple of support surged. Passengers lifted their cameras again, this time not just at the twins, but at Whitfield and the supervisors scrambling to contain the fallout. Carter's voice returned, calm but sharp. "Ma Jada, you're doing fine. Hold steady. This isn't just about 2 seats anymore. It's about truth." But just as his reassurance landed, Steele delivered the twist. Effective immediately, his voice declared through the radio, "Flight 227 is canceled. Passengers will be rebooked. This decision is final." The gate exploded. Shouts, curses, even chairs scraping as people jumped to their feet. The businessman slammed his briefcase shut. The mother clutched her child tightly. And the twins, their victory crumbled into dust. Because now, the entire flight was ruined, not just their trip. Every passenger, every witness, was turned against them. Maya's vision blurred with tears. Jada grabbed her hand. "They're not just stopping us from flying. They're trying to destroy Dad." The crowd surged toward them, anger and frustration mixing with confusion. Some defended the girls. Others accused them. The tension was electric, dangerous, and then, the lights above the gate flickered. The PA system crackled. Carter's voice returned, lower, colder than ever. "Steele, if you've canceled my daughter's flight, you've declared war." The line went dead. Gasps filled the gate. Passengers stared, caught between awe and dread. Whitfield smirked in the corner, Steele grinned in his office, and the twins stood frozen in the eye of the storm. What would their father do now? The answer hung in the air, sharp and unresolved. The gate was chaos. Passengers clustered in loud knots, some furious at the airline, others directing their frustration at the twins. Screens blinked CLD in harsh red letters, and in the center of it all, Maya and Jada clung to their upgraded tickets like useless scraps of paper. For the first time, doubt crept in. What if Dad can't fix this? Maya whispered, her voice shaking. Jada shook her head. He's not just fighting for us. He's fighting for everyone watching? And indeed, the world was watching. Dozens of live streams ran from Gate 17, hashtags were trending, and snippets of video showing the girls being denied boarding were already circulating online. Every minute, the narrative widened. In the operations tower, Steele smirked at his screams. Perfect. Carter's name is now tied to disruption, favoritism, and chaos. The board will call me when they want order restored. Whitfield, now sitting stiffly in a corner of the office, nodded quickly. Sir, it's the optics. People will think this was all about him abusing power for his daughters? Steele leaned back. Exactly. And perception is stronger than truth. But he underestimated one thing: truth spreads faster than lies when the whole world has a camera. Carter's voice cut back into the radio, this time calmer, steadier, the tone of a man who had made his decision. Steele, you wanted the board involved. Fine. I just looped them in. Every director now has a copy of the footage from Gate 17. They're seeing what the passengers saw. They're hearing what Whitfield said. They're reading the real boarding logs from my daughter's tickets. The story is out of your control. Steele froze. You what? Carter continued, relentless. And they're also seeing that you unilaterally canceled a full flight, costing us hundreds of thousands, damaging our reputation, and endangering safety protocols. So ask yourself, Steele, whose job is actually on the line? At the gate, Daniel's earpiece buzzed. His shoulders straightened. He turned to the crowd, his voice cracking slightly. Attention passengers. Flight 227 is no longer canceled. It will be reinstated and boarding shortly. A ripple of disbelief moved through the passengers. The businessman raised an eyebrow. The mother with the toddler whispered. He pulled it off. Maya and Jada's hearts pounded. Jada muttered. Dade turned it back on him. Whitfield wasn't finished. She stormed back into the gate area, her voice shrill. Don't believe this! They're manipulating you. This is corporate theater. These girls don't represent you. They're just the privileged daughters of the boss. Some passengers hesitated. The accusation was sharp. If the twins weren't CEO's kids, would this have gone differently? Maya stepped forward, her voice firm. She's right about one thing. If our dad weren't who he is, this would have ended differently. We wouldn't be standing here. We'd be labeled disruptive and dragged out. That's the truth. The gate went silent. Jada took her sister's hand and added, but that's exactly why this matters. Because if it can happen to us, with all the proof in the world, with the CEO watching, imagine what happens to people who don't have power behind them. People who don't get heard. That's who we're standing for now. The crowd erupted. Not with groans this time, but applause. Phones lifted again, capturing not just injustice, but resilience. Minutes later, supervisors announced boarding. The twins' tickets scanned smoothly. They stepped onto the jet bridge, the air cool and metallic, their footsteps echoing. For the first time that day, the path forward felt real. Passengers filed behind them, calmer now, murmuring about what they had witnessed. The businessmen caught their eye and nodded in respect. The mother whispered, "Be proud of yourselves," as she carried her sleeping child onto the plane. But behind them, Whitfield stood frozen, her badge being unclipped by security. Steele's phone buzzed relentlessly with calls from furious directors. And Carter, though unseen, had shifted the battlefield. As the plane taxied onto the runway, Maya stared out the window at the shrinking terminal. We won, right? She asked softly. Jada didn't answer right away. Then she said, we won today. But the fight doesn't end when the plane takes off. It ends when no one else has to go through this. Their words hung in the cabin like a quiet promise. And here's where the story turns to you, the listener. What would you do in this situation? If you saw two teenagers denied boarding while others were waved through, would you speak up? Would you film? Would you stand with them, even if it delayed your flight? And if you were in their shoes, if you had no powerful parent to call, no one to override the system, how would you fight back? Because the truth is, most people don't get a CEO on the other end of the phone. Most people don't get the system forced to listen. So the question is, should justice depend on power, or should power depend on justice? Airports are supposed to be gateways to opportunity, to family reunions, to new beginnings. But at Gate 17, we saw how quickly those doors can slam shut when bias is allowed to steer the system. Maya and Jada walked into that terminal as ordinary passengers. By the end, they had become symbols, not just of resilience, but of the deep cracks that still run through everyday life. Their father's power forced the truth into the light. But the uncomfortable question remains, what about the people who don't have that leverage? Because this wasn't just a story about two girls getting on a plane. It was about every quiet denial, every excuse wrapped in policy, every moment where someone is told, wait your turn, while someone else is ushered forward. The twins stood their ground. Their father fought back. The passengers became witnesses instead of bystanders. And in the end, accountability was forced into motion. But justice should never require a CEO's phone call. So as this story closes, remember racism often hides in plain sight, disguised as procedure or protocol. It survives when people look away. It breaks only when people decide enough is enough. Maybe you'll never stand at Gate 17, but one day, you will face a moment where someone is quietly denied what they deserve. The question is, will you watch in silence, or will you speak up? Because real change doesn't board flights. It boards people.